The previous podcast that I produced on depression might have seemed a little bit harsh. Having said that, a lot of people seem to have liked it, and I've had some comments to the effect of somebody needed to say this. But even so, I'm aware that it comes across as a little bit brutal. And in essence, it doesn't really offer the solution to depression. Well, everybody's case is different, but I'm going to go into some generalities that may or may not help people. The approach is based on Spinoza's work because, for me, Spinoza's analysis of the emotions is just impeccable. I've done I've used other approaches. I was involved in the Gestalt movement for 5 years, both training and in therapy, because you can't do one without the other. They won't let you. So if you want to study Gestalt, you have to go into therapy yourself. I was the angriest son of a bitch on the planet. Incredibly aggressive. These days I don't care all that much. But way back then, you could just see it on my face. And many people were afraid of me. You know, I'm a big guy, and they were just afraid of me. So let me go through some of the basic stuff that we've been through before in previous podcasts, but it sets the context for the whole thing. So our basic striving is to persist in our existence. Anything that stops us doing that will cause us pain, and anything that enhances our sense of existence will give us pleasure. And the word isn't really existence, it's to persist in your being, and I will produce a podcast, probably quite a lengthy podcast, on what that means at some point. So we have pleasure and pain. Pleasure when things are going well, you're being reinforced, and pain when things are not going well and you're being diminished in some way. Now, the painful emotions all derive from one emotion, and that is hatred. And so we have hatred, envy. Envy is hatred towards someone who's got something you want. Fear is a hatred towards some situation that may occur. Derision, grief. Depression. Yes, depression is derived from hatred. Nobody seems to say this, but if we're to follow Spinoza's spin on the whole thing, then that is indeed where hatred is derived from. Sorry, where depression is derived from. And let me say that this is all in the body. In my experience, I don't eat bread very often. Bread affects my mood terribly, while the gluten, and depresses my mood. So it is diminishing my body, clearly, and I do get other effects from gluten. It's diminishing the power in my body, and that comes along with a sense of, well, quite a depressed mood. It's not severe, and it lasts for maybe a few days after I've eaten some bread. Sometimes I'm willing to pay that price, but usually I'm not. So remember, depression is in the body. The hatred is in the body. Now, the hatred connection may not be immediately obvious, but some forms of depression are hatred towards oneself. For some reason, we may see that our behavior is not enhancing our life in some way. We may come to hate ourselves because, so for my example, in my case, I smoke, although after an event today, I will be stopping. I won't go into all of that, but I've had some fairly serious dental work today. And there was a very significant marker that I need to stop smoking. And there we go, there's an example of one emotion coming to dominate another one. Anyway, that's another story. But we can hate ourselves because we have learned, somebody told us ages and ages ago, that if you want to be good, then you have to have self-discipline, say. And we've ingested that idea because we don't exercise perfect self-discipline all the time. We come to hate ourselves. We see ourselves as inadequate in some way. So this conditioning by possibly our parents, teachers, peers, whoever, can cause us to hate ourselves. And so in that instance, the work that is involved is the same as I always talk about. It's literally sensing your body. Where is this feeling of depression? Because it will coincide with some sense of maybe heaviness or weakness or tension somewhere. And once we can sense that depressed state in our body, we can then start to look at, well, where might this have come from? So, an example I've given before, if a child is told by, if a child has a bullying parent and is told that it's wrong for it to get excited. Kids like to bounce about. But if they've got a bullying parent who hates to see the child happy, which is more common than you might think, then they will tell the child to be quiet, sit still, don't be silly. And inwardly, the child may not cognize it consciously, but inwardly the child will grow to hate that parent, so there will be a form of hatred growing. If the hatred isn't exposed, then all that will happen is that the child will become depressed. And particularly if it's ingested, introjected is a proper word, particularly if it's introjected, these commands from the parent to not be excited. So that's one source. Another source is just hatred towards someone or something that you cannot acknowledge. And let's get frank here, you may hate your partner, but for 101 reasons there is no way that you are going to admit that to yourself. There's too much at stake. And so that hatred is in there, and hatred is a diminished state, and that will manifest as depression. Anger bubbling in the background all the time. I can speak from personal experience on that. Until you can get the anger out, the depression is never going to go away. I was fortunate to know a number of people in my life who helped me deal with all of that. And I won't go into details, but I was going through a particularly difficult time. And the guy I was speaking to said, just go and wreck your bedroom. Just go wreck something. I didn't think he was serious. Anyway, this state of depression, anger, frustration within me just grew to a point where I did that. I went and wrecked the bedroom. It was a turning point in my whole life because I realized that I had power to do whatever the fuck I wanted. Fortunately, I had a partner who knows that I'm crazy and just accepted what had happened. I'm a bit uneasy telling people about things like that, but I'm just hoping that it helps someone. You have to get in touch with your anger, because anger is very often at the root of depression. Going back to Spinoza, hatred produces anger, hatred is a diminished state of being. Something has diminished you. Anger is your desire to destroy that thing that has diminished you. But if you, for some reason, are not willing to acknowledge that anger, then you'll probably turn it against yourself. And you'll blame yourself for things. Oh, I'm not good enough. So say you are in a totally crappy relationship, and you are living a life that's alien to your own natural expression. Then you may be saying to yourself all the time, I should be more considerate, I should be more accommodating, I should do more of the things that the other person wants to do. All the time, the beast, the wolf, is just getting more and more fucking frustrated. And because it's frustrated, it turns on itself. It has to, that energy has to come out somewhere. So the energy comes out in, oh, you're not a considerate person. Oh, you're a total asshole. Oh, you're a very, very bad person. You're hardly worthy to know these people, and all that kind of thing will start to happen. If you're depressed, you need to find where that anger is coming from, or that hatred. So, we can have other examples. So, maybe your job. Maybe you just don't have it in you to say to yourself, this job really sucks and I fucking hate it. That expression itself, and I'm afraid it has to be coarse. It has to have guts in it. It has to come from the wolf. You have to be totally and honestly brutal with yourself. I hate this fucking job. I'm going to use some really bad language here. I'm sorry, if, particularly towards the ladies who listen to this, but I just need to get over how we acknowledge all this stuff that's going on within us. I hate that fucking job. Fucking futile activity. And all those cunts that are working there, I fucking hate them. I'd kill them if I could. You need to express what the wolf is feeling and acknowledge it as belonging to you. You're not play acting here. This is your real essence coming out. Anger is a wonderful thing. I'll tell you a very funny story. When we were involved in the Gurdjieff work, my wife was expressing that she thought that anger was a very good thing. She has a training in psychology as well. And the guy who was running the group, who I had a deep respect for and still do, is dead now, but almost every day I thank him for what he told me. But he just got this thing about anger. And when my wife said that, he said, no, anger is a negative emotion, it's not good. And my wife persisted. And guess what? He got angry. He didn't see it, but it was very, very funny. Anyway, so anger, frustrated excitement, they would call it in Gestalt. Anger is a form of excitement. So you have to get these emotions, you have to get in touch with them. And very often they're fairly brutal, violent, and coarse. But that's what the beast is. All the nice icing sugar that you put on top with little pink bits on it and candles. If you're playing around with that, nothing's going to happen. You have to get to the guts of the cake underneath it. And that's where all these emotions rest. Hatred towards your work, hatred towards your partner, hatred towards your parents. Most people cannot even acknowledge that they might hate their parents. Hatred towards your own life because it has given you so much pain. Hatred towards all the things that have given you pain. And so we got parents, teachers, friends, cheating lovers, whatever it is that has given you pain. You don't have to go and kill them. All you have to do is acknowledge within yourself that you hate them. It's an act of honesty. It's also an act of healing. And I hate that word because these new age twits use that word. But it is an act of healing. So unacknowledged hatred and anger will fester within you and very often turn its attention on you. And these states are diminished states. By becoming angry, by trying to acknowledge what it is that's causing your pain, you become active. And somehow you'll lift yourself out of the depressed state, because you cannot be depressed if you are expressing power. It's a contradiction in terms. And to acknowledge inwardly your hatred and your hurt and your disappointment and all of those things is to be active. And until you do that, then it's fairly probable that the depression will not go away. So, I hope that's been useful. I would suggest if somebody wants to go through that process, they find some help. Gestalt therapists, they live and breathe their patients expressing hatred and violence. They know that until that comes out, it's just going to be a festering pile of pus inside them. So, just to go through it all, this is Spinoza's take, but it ties in with a lot of other things. Any sad emotion comes about because we have diminished power. You need to find out how your power is being diminished by your parents, by your lovers, by your partner, maybe even by your kids, by your job, whatever it is. And you need to say within yourself the absolute truth about how you feel about it. I fucking hate that person. Only that energy behind it will do anything. That's not all we need to do. It isn't all gritting teeth and hurling abuse. But working on the emotions does require that as part of the activity. Anyway, I hope that's useful and leads at least someone to start looking at the things that have hurt them or damaged them in life that they are truly angry about. Anyway, I hope it's useful.